My name's Brad Dalrymple. I'm an environmental engineer, which is my job. So I think it's a cool job. I think it's one of the coolest jobs around.
One of the few people that actually works in the industry you studied?
Yeah.
You went to uni for it?
I actually did a degree called a Bachelor of Environmental Engineering.
Wow.
And lo and behold, I am still an environmental engineer.
How long have you been doing this?
It's 18 years.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
I can.
Yeah.
You're pretty old.
No, but honestly, it's a great job, and I feel very blessed to do a job that I really enjoy and work on an issue that I'm super passionate about.
I'm not sure that many people even know what an environmental engineer is.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about what it's called, it's like you're designing the environment to be cohesive with us. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's really hard. It's a really hard thing to describe. I don't even know what an environmental engineer does or is. But
it's you, mate.
But that's the thing. Like, it really varies. Like, you can work in all sorts of areas. So there's air pollution, water pollution, soil contamination, waste management, all sorts of different areas. But I think fundamentally, an environmental engineer is looking at ways in which to reduce and mitigate the impact on the environment from things, whether that be a development or an activity.
Humans,
or
mainly.
Humans, yeah. So it's trying to basically get humans or work with humans to minimise the human impact on our environment. But what we almost always see is what is good for the environment is good for humans.
We are the environment.
Exactly. This whole disconnect of humans and environment is just, it doesn't exist. We are absolutely intrinsically, in a gazillion different ways, connected to the environment. I think that's the big thing that I guess environmental engineers and other environmental type professionals and activists try to put or get across, is that everything we do is linked to everything else. What I can tell you is what I do for a job, and I work for a company called Ocean Protect, and it's basically about protecting the oceans with a focus on protecting the oceans from pollution. The problem of ocean plastic, the amount of plastic in our oceans.
Plastic Island, all
Plastic
those things
Island,
we've heard
the
all
Great
about,
Pacific Garbage Patch. So there'll be more plastic mass than the mass of fish in our oceans by 2050.
That sounds shocking, and it is,
Yeah.
but I'm not at all surprised.
And there's a lot of attention on the problem, but what I see is that people are often not connecting the cause of that problem to the problem. And so one thing that I try and create awareness of is, okay, where is that pollution coming from? And research indicates that we think about 80% of all ocean plastic comes from land-based sources. So, and primarily that's stormwater runoff. So when rain falls on the ground, on our streets, on our car parks, on our shopping centres, on our whatever, that generally washes straight into our waterways and carrying all the pollution that goes with it. The common pollutants that we see, the visible stuff, is like cigarette butts and plastic wrappers and plastic single-use bottles and that sort of stuff. But there's also a whole bunch of less visible pollutants as well, like heavy metals and bacteria and sort of other nasty chemicals, which are very damaging to the health of our oceans and ultimately us.
Right.
And we're trying to essentially mitigate that problem. Essentially try to, reduce the pollution at the source if we can, and if necessary, intercept that pollution and capture it as well, instead of it going to our oceans.
Right. And also pushing for an awareness of this issue too.
Yeah, exactly. It's an easy message for me to create. It's an easy issue for me to create awareness of, because it's, once you see the problem, you're super passionate. Like, no one's advocating for more plastic in our oceans. Thankfully.
No.
In our day-to-day life, we see it. We lift up drain access covers and look inside some of the assets that we put in to intercept the pollution, and it's staggering.
But that is working?
Absolutely, yeah. So,
right.
And what we see though, like with stormwater, for example, is that where assets are put in the ground and are appropriately maintained, and in their most simple form, they're like little underground garbage bins. So stormwater comes in through the pipe, and this little underground garbage bin intercepts the pollution. Where they're put in and where they're maintained, they're fantastic. We pull out so much pollution, it would blow people's mind. But the reality is, in Australia, we think about 90 to 95% of all our urban areas just have no stormwater treatment at all.
Wow.
Nothing. So
Nothing.
if water falls on the ground, bang.
Into a pipe, into the ocean.
Into a pipe, into the ocean.
Wow.
Yeah. And where often assets, like stormwater treatment assets, are installed, they don't get maintained. So the underground garbage bin might just fill up and just overflow. So new pollution comes in and just spills straight out. So we're advocating for that change. So for example, we've sent out an open letter to about over 2,000 politicians across Australia.
Wow.
And we're actually communicating with those politicians with face-to-face meetings and stuff. Nothing as cool as a podcast chat with you, Ven. But
Thank you,
yeah, we're liaising with politicians and like mayors, senators, etc., to essentially try to achieve what we're calling a zero litter to ocean target.
Wow.
So we don't want any more litter going into our oceans. Nobody does.
Nobody wants
that. Yeah,
that.
but we need to, it's one thing to want something, it's another thing to actually do something about it and actually achieve it. And look, it takes hard work and resources and, to be honest, money to actually do it. For example, the state of California have set themselves a goal of zero litter to ocean. So anything bigger than a cigarette butt in the state of California will not discharge into any waterway in California.
Wow.
In the next, I think they started that initiative in 2009 and they're going to probably achieve it in about 5 or 10 years.
Wow.
If they can do it, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I do recall seeing a fair bit of litter surfing by the Venice Pier.
Yeah.
When I lived there.
That litter at Venice Pier, that litter would have come from the land in California.
I saw a dirty diaper, nappy,
Yeah.
in the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the ocean, in the
Yeah,
waves.
yeah.
Like pristine day,
Totally.
glassy, 2-foot right-handers off the pier,
Totally.
and a poo-filled nappy.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
What?
Yeah, it is disgusting, and we do use the oceans as our dumping ground. Like we take
Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. That's the thing about stormwater, is that's like, it is out of sight, out of mind. We've developed these fantastic drainage systems to get the stormwater away as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Right.
To mitigate flooding and
Yeah.
other property damage. But in doing so, our creeks and rivers and oceans have become our sewers and dumping grounds.
Wow.
It's not right. And again, that's part of my job. I'm going to change that.
And is that what this thing is?
Yeah, so this is actually a little bit of a prototype. This is one of the sort of systems that we sell. This is a prototype, so
Right.
it basically just shows it. It's in a Perspex container. Shows one of the devices we put in, and all it is a glorified garden bed.
Right.
So instead of stormwater going into a pit, into a pipe, into a waterway, this actually, you imagine stormwater would come into like a large sort of garden bed area or sort of a large basin area, and water would just basically soak through this mulch layer and this fancy Filterra media. And as it drains through, it absorbs a whole bunch of pollution. It makes the stormwater a lot cleaner. So not only just removes, I'm talking about removing stuff that you can't even see, like microscopic,
Wow.
like bacteria, heavy metals,
And this
etc.
is, you were saying earlier when we were chatting about it, this is just a scale model. You can
It's a
make
scale
them
model.
any
Yeah,
size, right?
yeah, we can put them
Huge.
into any garden bed. Like in its most simple form, it could be as small as this table, like 0.9 metre by 0.9 metre, like a little tree pit.
Right.
Or it could be as big as like a 2,000 square metre
Wow.
system. So. But this is just one sort of asset type we do. But this treats water to a really, really high standard. What we're calling for Australia to do is really, in its most simple form, stop litter. So it's really easy to remove anything bigger than 5 millimetres. You just need some sort of like a little underground garbage bin. We can treat a lot of water in a very small amount of space.
Right.
Pretty simple. It needs a bit of mojo to do that.
Yeah, it does need a bit.
But we want the community to make that connection.
Yeah.
So
Because when the community demands it, that's when it
Totally,
arrives.
totally. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, like, whilst we're sort of lobbying politicians and getting a lot of, good sort of feedback from politicians, and to be honest, I'll give you an example. I won't mention any names, but I met with a state senator just recently, a very environmentally conscious, leader in environmental sort of advocacy in Australia. And we showed them some of the footage of the pollutants that we see in our assets, like underground garbage bins, and they were like, "Whoa! I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea." And we actually did a survey of a nationwide survey of about 1,000 Australians recently, and we said, "What do you guys think? Where is most of the plastic coming from? Is it litter discarded at the beach? Is it sewage, like with microplastics out of your laundry in your bathrooms? Is it fishing nets or commercial sort of people dumping rubbish at sea? Or is it stormwater? Or is it something else?" And whilst I know that 80% of ocean plastic comes from predominantly stormwater, only about 24% of the Australian population think that.
Got it right.
Most people think, about a quarter think it is discarded at sea. So fishing nets and people just throwing their bait bags over the boat.
Right.
Another quarter thought it was litter discarded at the beach, and another quarter thought it was microplastics. Microplastics, they're a massive issue, but they're only a very small percentage of the overall pollutant load. Everyone recognises the problem, but they don't. There's a lack of awareness about the cause of that problem.
Sure.
An analogy we like to use is, okay, if you walk into your kitchen, okay, and the sink's running, there's a plug in the sink, and the water's going into the sink and it's overflowing, and it's spilling all the water out on the floor, making a mess. What do? Do you grab the mop and the bucket, or do you turn the tap off? And what we're seeing is people are going straight to, when it comes to ocean plastic, which is a massive problem, people are going straight to the mop and the bucket. Like, so for example, Buoyant Slat has raised millions of dollars for this Great Ocean Cleanup Initiative, which is a fantastic initiative, but it's a mop and a bucket solution.
Right.
Pete Galinsky, you might have seen around Australia, he's installed a whole bunch of these sea bins around all these harbours and waterways around Australia. Again, capturing pollution when it's already in the harbour environment. Again, fantastic, but it's a mop and a bucket solution.
Right.
We need to stop the flow of pollution into our oceans if we've got any chance of actually making solving this problem of ocean plastic.
Sure.
And you can hear me talk about it as well.
Yeah.
I can talk about this till the cows come home.
You can tune into the Ocean Protect podcast,
sure.
which is available on, if you have an iPhone, it's on the podcast app if you have it.
It's on all the podcast
It's on all the
apps,
podcast
Spotify,
channels.
everything.
Yeah, you can hear Brad talk all about this stuff.
Yeah.
I actually,
Yeah.
along the same line, I would like to change the tack a little bit and
Please.
ask how finding out all of this information and seeing it for yourself and learning it over this last 18 years, how has that affected you personally in your spiritual growth and your understanding of kindness, compassion, living in this world cohesively? I'm sure it's a huge topic for me to ask anyway, but how do you feel about what you've learned impacting your daily life?
It impacts your life on so many different ways. It's almost hard to describe. It would be a year-long podcast.
It would.
I'll give you a few little tidbits of insight. So
highlights.
Well, number one, it's not a highlight. It actually makes you very despondent, depressed, when you see the enormity of not just ocean plastic problems, but the extent of deforestation, climate change, biodiversity loss, the plight of billions of animals getting slaughtered unnecessarily in slaughterhouses around the planet. There are so many environmental issues that make you just feel despondent and depressed, and you think, oh, what's the point? That's very tough. It's sometimes ignorance would be bliss.
But for who?
But for who? Yeah, exactly. And if I was to stick my head in the sand and not worry about the vast majority of sea turtles with plastic in their belly, or the 99% of seabirds with plastic in their bellies and dying slow and painful deaths, if I wasn't aware of that, or sort of just doing anything about it, or just ignored it, that would probably be really a nice situation for me, but not for them, for sure.